A weekend vacation to a remote cabin turned out to be a nightmare for Ash Williams and his 4 friends, leaving Ash as the sole survivor. But is Ash really the victim, or is he the one responsible? An ancient Sumerian book, said to be crafted from human flesh and written in blood, but does it have the power to raise the dead? Time for Unsolved Horror Mysteries. A group of Michigan State University students decided they needed a break from campus life. Ashley Williams, known to his friends as Ash, his girlfriend Linda, Ash's sister Cheryl, their friend Scott, and Scott's girlfriend Shelley. They wanted to get away for a weekend, somewhere peaceful and far away from city life. Scott had learned about an isolated cabin in rural Tennessee that was available to rent at a price affordable to a college student's budget.
And the best part is we get it so cheap.
To get to the cabin, they had to cross an old bridge over a deep chasm. The bridge hadn't been maintained or repaired in years. The cabin was deep in the woods, a long distance from the main road. They finally arrived at the cabin. The building was old and rustic, perhaps a bit run down. But there was electricity, running water, and a fireplace, adequate for their weekend adventure. According to Ash's testimony, the strange occurrences began later that evening. While the friends were having dinner, the cellar trap door suddenly flew open in the next room. They assumed it must be an animal.
Maybe it is just some animal.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But when Scott and Ash went down to the cellar to investigate, they found no living creatures. Instead, they discovered an interesting collection of objects, some quite bizarre. A Winchester 37A 20-gauge shotgun, a Panasonic reel-to-reel tape recorder, a strange artifact resembling a ceremonial dagger with a skull sculpted on its hilt, and perhaps the most unusual item, a mysterious book. The cover of the book was gruesome, resembling a distorted human face with the texture of dried human skin. Inside the book were pages filled with what appeared to be text written in an unknown language, with hand-drawn pictures of skulls and human body parts.
Come on, let's take this stuff upstairs.
They took the items upstairs, thinking they might provide entertainment for the evening. The friends gathered by the fireplace to listen to one of the tapes found in the cellar.
Listen to this.
The tape contained a recording by a professor named Raymond Noby. According to the tape, Noby had been staying in that very cabin with his wife. He described how he had been excavating the ruins of Kandar when he discovered a book of ancient Sumerian burial practices and funerary incantations.
It is entitled Naturan de Manto, roughly translated, Book of the Dead.
He claimed the book was bound in human flesh and inked in human blood, and that it detailed incantations that had the ability to resurrect demons, creatures that lie dormant but are never truly dead. The tape terrified Cheryl, who attempted to stop the tape, but Scott insisted that they continue listening.
Tatir Mano.
Noby can be heard on the tape reciting passages from the book in some unknown language. The incantations became more intense. Suddenly, a branch from a nearby tree crashed through the window. An argument ensued, and the friends all decided to go to their respective rooms for the evening. Unbeknownst to the others, Cheryl decided to leave the cabin at night for reasons that are still unclear. She returned from the woods screaming, in a complete panic, her clothing torn, her body covered with scratches and bruises. Ash believed Cheryl had been attacked by an animal, but Cheryl claimed the forest itself had attacked her, insisting the trees had come alive and become violent. Ash and the others were skeptical of Cheryl's claims, but Cheryl refused to stay in the cabin, claiming it was too dangerous. She demanded that Ash drive her back to town. He agreed to take her. They got in the car and and began to drive back to the main road. But when they reached the bridge, they found a shocking discovery. The bridge they had crossed earlier that day was no longer there. Something had torn the bridge apart. A massive structure of this size demolished in mere hours without a single trace. What could have done this sort of damage in such a short amount of time? We'll reveal the shocking secret in just a moment when Unsolved Horror Mysteries returns. With their only way out of the woods destroyed, Ash and Cheryl were forced to return to the cabin. This is when the night's disturbing events would truly begin. Ash, still not believing Cheryl's story, continued to listen to the Nobi tape. In the recording, Professor Nobi described the method for killing a demonic entity, which requires dismembering a possessed host. But what happened next was truly unbelievable. Cheryl suddenly began to levitate. Her eyes turned white. She spoke in a raspy, inhuman voice.
One by one, we will take you.
Cheryl collapsed to the floor. Ash and Linda were worried. They went to check on her, but Cheryl came alive once more, stabbing Linda in the ankle with a pencil. Cheryl grabbed Ash and with inhuman strength, threw him across the room with ease. Scott finally managed to subdue Cheryl, locking her in the cellar. The others discuss an exit plan, but decide to wait until morning, as any attempt to travel through the woods and mountains on foot in the dark would be too dangerous. But little did they know, what they would encounter inside that cabin would be far more deadly. When Scott went to check on Shelley, she attacked him. She had the same ghoulish appearance as Cheryl. In self-defense, Scott was forced to throw Shelley into the fireplace, but Shelley would not die, relentlessly attacking Scott, even as he stabbed her with a hunting knife, and once again with a strange dagger they found in the cellar. Scott and Ash believed Shelley was finally dead. But against all odds, she returned to life once more. Scott dismembered Shelley with an axe, chopping her into pieces. Scott and Ash then carried Shelley's remains outside, where they would bury them. Afterwards, Scott was distraught over what he had just done. Scott told Ash that he was leaving.
I mean, there's gotta be another way besides the bridge.
What are you, crazy?
Scott headed out into the woods, leaving Ash and Linda behind. Ash went to check on Linda, but he discovered that she, too, had become possessed by the demonic forces. Ash retreated to the main room of the cabin. Moments later, Scott returned from the woods. Scott was severely injured and covered with blood.
You're gonna be just fine.
While Ash tended to Scott's wounds, Linda, still possessed by the demon, continued to taunt Ash. At one point, both Linda and Cheryl appeared to have reverted back into their normal human forms. They tried to convince Ash that they were no longer possessed, but it was all a ruse. Ash locked Linda out of the cabin. Linda managed to find her way back into the cabin, where she attacked Ash with a strange ceremonial dagger. After a struggle, Ash used the ceremonial dagger to finally kill Linda. Or so he thought. Ash took Linda's body to the woodshed. He planned to dismember her body with a chainsaw, as the Nobi tapes instructed them to do. But he had second thoughts. He couldn't bring himself to cut the love of his life into pieces. Instead, he chose to simply bury her body in the yard. But this would prove to be a mistake, as Linda would rise from the grave and attack Ash once again, forcing Ash to decapitate Linda with a shovel. Back inside, Ash discovered that Cheryl had escaped from the cellar. Arming himself with a shotgun, he located Cheryl, who had been hiding outside the cabin. He fired his shotgun at Cheryl, shooting her in the shoulder. He began to see bizarre, gruesome sights, blood seeping from the walls and other parts of the house, clocks and other items behaving unusually. Were these the delusions of a man driven insane, or the work of sinister demonic forces? Cheryl broke through the cabin door and attempted to kill Ash once again. He tried to barricade the cabin door, but suddenly, Scott had risen from the floor, a demon like the others. Scott attacked Ash. Ash fought off Scott's attacks as Cheryl broke through the barricade and knocked Ash to the floor. The two demons attempted to kill Ash. During their fight, Ash noticed that the strange Book of the Dead had landed near the fireplace and was starting to burn. Smoke began rising from both Scott and Cheryl's bodies, indicating that as the book burned, the demons would burn as well. As Cheryl raised a fireplace poker to skewer Ash, he quickly grabbed the book and tossed it into the fire. As the book burned into cinders, Cheryl and Scotty began to disintegrate, rapidly turning into a gruesome mess. Free from the madness, Ash stepped out into the daylight. But this will not be the end to Ash's story. What really happened on that night in the cabin, isolated from the world? Ash's story is outrageous, and many are skeptical of his claims, even theorizing that Ash himself is the one responsible for the murders. His defensive wounds are consistent with his telling of the events, but were his injuries the result of demon attacks, as Ash claims, or something more down to earth? Several experts have theorized that Ash and his friends had been experimenting with mind-altering drugs on that fateful evening when the friends listened to Professor Nobi's diabolical tapes. With their talks of demons and dismemberment, they were sent into a mass psychosis. The drugs caused them to confuse the stories on the tapes with reality, distorting their senses to make them see one another as demons, creatures they must defend themselves against, leading to a bloody night of terror and death. So was it a night of drug-fueled partying gone wrong? Or is Ash's story, as outrageous as it sounds, the unlikely truth? If you like this video, smash that subscribe on this YouTube. A lot of stuff to watch. Subscribe, jerks.